Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you to the Kuan group for selecting Toronto amongst these other terrific cities who are here today. I'm here on behalf of our mayor, John Tory, who is in City Council, probably as we speak, even though it is probably very late into the morning, but they have a very packed agenda this time of year. Toronto is Canada's largest city, and really, that has happened over the course of the past 45 years when it was a relative backwater to Montreal. Things have changed a lot in Canada. As you can see in the photo, if I can advance this slide, there we go. We are on the water. We're actually on Lake Ontario, part of the Great Lakes system, which comprises about 20% of the world's fresh water. So unlike many of our other cities that we've heard from today, we're blessed with a rich resource in that regard. Toronto is consistently ranked in international rankings very highly. There's a PricewaterhouseCoopers study completed in 2012 that ranked Toronto first in quality of life and satisfaction, second in quality of intellectual capital, and second in health, safety, security of its residents. Toronto is a very big city now, has grown rapidly. The population of the city proper is now about 2.8 million, making it the third largest city in Canada and the United States. The Greater Toronto Area, our metropolitan region, is about 8 million. The economy is quite strong in our city. Toronto is the third largest financial center in North America, the third largest manufacturing hub, and generates $146 billion worth of economic activity per year. At the same time, Toronto is very diverse. It is considered by many measures now to be the most diverse city in the world. Immigrants make up 49% of our population. Toronto residents comprise over 230 ethnic groups, and 45% of the population has a mother tongue that is neither of the two official languages of Canada, which is French and English. Most importantly, though, beyond the numbers, is that unlike in some parts of the world, this diversity is welcomed and embraced in Toronto, and what minor tensions we do have are quite small compared to what many other urban communities face. It's our Canadian way, perhaps, but we are very good at welcoming foreigners into our fold. Toronto is also growing. We are growing at a rate of about 80 to 100,000 new people a year in our metropolitan region. We're the fastest growing large city in North America. We right now have 147 tall buildings under construction within the city itself. And this success is really due to the quality of life factors that I mentioned before, but also to a very deliberate policy of planned growth and intensification. And I'm going to go through just the three major projects for which we were asked to participate in this prize. This clicker doesn't like me very much. The first is the intensification of Toronto's core. So Toronto has been densifying as an intentional strategy as a means to improve livability, sustainability, and overall economic success. This shows you what our skyline looked like in 2005. And that shows you what it looks like in 2015, including some of these buildings that are currently under construction. So I couldn't give you that as an actual photograph because it wouldn't be completely built out. But as you can see, this is all in our downtown, right on our lakefront. And it has not happened here by accident. There are really two major policy directions that were created over the last 2 decades that have caused this to happen. The first is actually a provincial piece of legislation, which is comparable to a state-level government, called Places to Grow. The policy directed growth to the already existing built-up areas of the city. And by limiting the amount of sprawl, we actually have created a green belt in which no development is permitted, and that has played a real role in pushing a lot of our development community away from the typical suburban subdivision developments and into the downtown, where they have had to find a new way to work, and corporations like the one I work for on the waterfront have played a role in helping them understand the differences between building out in a greenfield versus building in the intensified downtown core. And what we've done is protected a lot of that former agricultural land, or some of it is continuing agricultural use, and focused our energies in the downtown. The city, in response to that, created a new official plan which was really intended to say, if we're going to direct all of this growth to the city, where should it happen in the city? And there are 4 main growth areas that were targeted for zoning increases, for increased density. The biggest one being the downtown core, which is shown in orange, the satellite centers of what were former suburbs of the city of Toronto, the avenues, which are our widest, biggest streets with the greatest transit capacity and vehicular capacity, and the employment areas. So the result of this has been exactly, I think, what we intended. And if you look at this graph, what you can see is that this downtown of the city is growing 4 times faster than the city as a whole, as well as the region. So in fact, the growth rate in the region has been declining. The cities has been hovering around 5 to 4% as a whole, but the downtown core in the 1990s grew at about 7 to 8%. In the first part of the 2000s at about 10%. In the 5 years between 2006 and 2011 grew at 18%. And in the most recent 4 years, we don't have the final 5-year number yet, we've grown at 23%. So that line for the downtown continues to grow. And it's growing in 2 ways. The downtown continues to be the heart of commerce. So 40% of our largest companies are downtown. We have about 500,000 jobs in our downtown core, and 40% of the economic activity of the entire city comes out of the downtown area. Our downtown also continues to be very attractive to major corporations. These are all corporations that have had to undergo extensive consolidations over the last several years. Difficult thing for big companies to do. They could have easily done it out in the suburbs where taxes are lower, where space is easy to find, but instead they have all managed to negotiate leases and or build new spaces for themselves so they can be in the heart of the city. The residential population has grown as well. So in the past 40 years, we've had about 135% increase in the residential population in the downtown, and that rate is expected to continue to grow. And this is in a city that never had the kind of urban exodus that we saw in a lot of US cities south of the border. Toronto always had a solid downtown population, but it has accelerated its growth dramatically. And to keep up with this, one of the main efforts that is now underway is to figure out what do we do for the next 10 years. And so there is a new plan, a revision to our city's official plan that we call TO Core, that's looking specifically at the downtown core area as the priority area for growth in the entire city. And that plan will be coming out in the coming months through extensive community consultation, public interaction, discussions with business leaders, residents, community groups, et cetera, to try and make sure that as our growth continues, which it looks like it will, it continues in the right direction that we set early on. I think this conference has talked a lot about social infrastructure. A very successful piece of social infrastructure we have in Toronto is the Toronto Public Library System. It was created as the system that it currently is in 1998 when Greater Toronto was formed by absorbing some of those outlying suburbs. And it brought together 7 different library systems under one roof, and the library has created remarkably equitable access to world-class library programs, spaces, collections, and staff expertise in all corners of the city. 72% of adults use the library system per year. The library is one of the busiest in the world, and it's no longer just a place to take out books and read. It's been reinvented constantly, embracing digital technology, well-designed spaces, community events, and cultural services. I've gotten a little bit behind here. As the library has worked to update its branches over the past several years, it's placed a strong emphasis on design excellence, a topic that has been discussed at this forum as well. Public space in and around the libraries has been a big focus of the work to ensure that the libraries are attractive places for people to come and spend time. And the library collection includes material in over 40 languages, which reflects the cultural diversity of the city. And at the branch level, we have a library settlement program, which is a partnership between the library and each of the local communities to try and help the thousands of newcomers to the library system who come to it each year to be able to understand how to use the library and gain access to all of its resources. And the third component is our waterfront. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a growth plan which is designed to foster intensification downtown. The greatest resource we have for that is our former industrial waterfront. The Waterfront Corporation, for which I work, is responsible for an area of about 2,000 hectares of former industrial land, and it is the main place where Toronto is expected to grow, and that's why a public benefit corporation was set up with the purposes of adhering to some of the policy goals that you see listed there on the screen, but also to provide that long-term continuity between political administrations, between economic cycles, and make sure that our growth on the waterfront is planned and is done in a way that maximizes the benefit to the people of the City of Toronto. What you see pictured here is a new community that was planned just in the last few years and was built almost overnight. It was chosen as the site for the 2015 Pan Am Athletes Village. This was a master planned community that is now in the process of being transferred from a series of dormitory type spaces for the athletes into a permanent residential neighborhood. We've also integrated sustainable systems in everything we do, so that what you see pictured here would be a stormwater collection pond in a traditional subdivision plan. Instead, it is a water feature in one of our newest parks. We're taking all of the stormwater from the precinct in which this was built. We collect it. It's processed in a treatment plant that is beneath that public pavilion that has washrooms and cafe space in it, and is then returned to Lake Ontario cleaner than when it landed on the ground of the city streets. We have an inclusive social housing policy. 20% of all the residential units in the waterfront must be affordable housing. We also have a mandate to make sure that it is housing that fits in. So this is an affordable housing project that does not really look like a typical affordable housing project. From a social integration point of view, from a design excellence point of view, this is very much the direction that our city is trying to move in. We have another famous housing project called Regent Park, which was a towers in the park model, and that is all being demolished and replaced with housing that looks fairly similar to what you see here that we've been doing on the waterfront. Creating great parks is critical to the success of the communities. Here you see a park that is actually integrated into a massive flood protection landform. Resiliency is another big topic. The Great Lakes are actually not going to rise with sea level rise. In fact, the Great Lakes are going to drop. So our resiliency strategy is how do we protect our wetlands on the water's edge. But what will happen is the rivers that feed Lake Ontario are all becoming much more flash flood prone, and we've had to build a massive berm or a dike called a flood protection landform to protect this community. And what we did was we integrated it with a brand new park, an 18-acre park designed by Michael Van Valkenburg, associates from New York. It's really become a kind of piece of Olmstedian architecture in this corner of the city that was formerly uninhabited. We've also adopted a transit-first policy, so this very same neighborhood is the recipient of a brand new transit line, the first new transit line built in the city in the last 15 years, and the first one that was built as an integrated part of a new neighborhood. So that Athletes Village that I mentioned has this transit line that is now operating just as the new tenants are moving in. This isn't all just about residential development, though from a financial point of view, that's very much what the market wants to do. So we have had to take steps to make sure that we're bringing businesses down here. So we have a coherent and diversified community. We've installed one of the first ultra broadband networks in North America to attract economic sectors such as digital media, film production, education, and communications technology. This is one of the many office buildings that are now underway right on our water's edge in proximity to residential neighborhoods with the goal of people being able to live and work near one another. We've placed a great emphasis on design excellence. We've brought in some of the best design talent from around the world. In many cases, we're working with fairly small spaces. This is a 2,000 square meter deck that was designed by West 8 from Rotterdam and has become a landscape landmark in the city where we were simply trying to widen the sidewalk originally. This was the product of a design competition, and it's a space that is now occupied 24/7. And had we built a flat deck, it would not be the success that it has become. There's been a lot of discussion about public engagement. We have done in the last 5 years, I think, about 300 public meetings and stakeholder meetings. We do probably 2 a week or so on every project, and I think the real lesson on public engagement is that it can't just be going out and listening to the public and then continuing on with your project as you originally laid it out, which is very often, I think, how it gets approached. You have to go into public engagement meetings with an idea that you're going to get feedback that's going to change your project, be willing to go back to the drawing table, have the architects revise the design, and then bring that back to the community and show them how you've responded. And we've been very successful at doing that. We have brought master plans now to City Council for approval, and not only have we not had anyone come and depute against them, we've had residents from the local community come out and depute in favor of our plans being adopted. And after spending many years working in New York City, I'd never seen that happen in my life before I came to Toronto, so it can be done. We are also focused a bit on year-round programming. Hard as it may be to think about right now, there is actually winter in our city and it's cold for many parts of the year, so we use programming to get people downtown. And the last project that I'm going to leave you off with is our biggest resiliency challenge, which is that the Don River can flood. It was put into a concrete channel that you see alongside our lovely elevated highway, and it puts this whole corner of the city at flood risk. And we are going to be solving this problem by relocating the river mouth into a brand new channel, providing overflow channels so that this entire 800-acre Portland area can now be revitalized and redeveloped, which it can't right now. So I am going to cue the video, and that will be the end of my 4-minute overtime presentation. So here we're traveling down the existing river. The buildings are obviously not here yet. You look to the right, you see that channel, which is now just a slip, and this is the new river mouth carved through vacant industrial land with wetlands designed to absorb storm events, new bridges so that we can connect the new neighborhoods, terminating in a new waterfront park with a view of our downtown icon, which may not be quite as exciting as the Sydney Opera House, but is probably almost as recognizable to many people around the world. Thank you very much.